Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 121 verse 1 and 2 from the New King James Bible says this: I will lift up my eyes to the hills. From whence comes my help? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. I'm with Rolene Marks from Lay of the Land. Now, Rolene, what is Lay of the Land?
Well, first of all, it's great to be chatting to you, and thank you for asking me. Lay of the Land is a website that two of my friends and I started, I think now nearly 6 years ago, to provide a platform for a variety of opinions on issues in the Middle East and also issues facing Jews around the world, especially in this time of rising anti-Semitism and misinformation. So it's a platform that gives writers or anybody who wants to express an opinion, of course within reasonable limits, an opportunity to write on a variety of topics. I mean, we've had everything from coverage of this ongoing war to anti-Semitism in particular countries, to health advice and just people, sharing their family stories. So it exists for that. And then a couple of years ago, as an offshoot, I started the Israel Brief, which is a YouTube channel that looks at the top stories making headlines in Israel every day, because people are complaining they don't see Israel's side of the story in the mainstream media, or a very skewed slant on the situation in Israel. So I try to address that as well.
I imagine you've been very busy since October the 7th.
Just a tad.
Now you're reporting on the land of Israel. How reliable is the mainstream media when it comes to Israel?
That is a fantastic question. And I think that's the million shekel question here. I think that the mainstream media is getting less and less reliable when it comes to issues around Israel. In fact, just a couple of days ago, there was a fascinating study put out that the mainstream media effectively, many Western channels, has become a literal mouthpiece for Hamas, which is a proscribed terrorist organization. And we've certainly seen so many examples of this since the 7th of October. The BBC having to issue apology after apology, but not correcting their methodology of reporting. We certainly see it on a near daily basis when it comes to coverage of the humanitarian situation in Gaza with regards to food. We see mainstream media outlets, Sky News, the BBC, CNN. It seems the BBC is a repeat offender, routinely just parroting whatever Hamas propaganda is put out there without checking the facts on the ground. And, this is having a detrimental effect, not just in the way that the world perceives Israel, but also is creating an environment of hate that is causing anti-Semitism to rise to astronomical and extremely, extremely concerning levels.
Now, we hear a lot about the aid supplies and people being shot when they're trying to collect aid and food. I don't really know what's happening there. I imagine Israel is shooting in the air sometimes to tell people, no, don't rush at this. But I don't imagine Israel is actually shooting innocent victims trying to collect food. So is Hamas actually killing people there and blaming it on Israel to make Israel look bad? And of course, all the media outlets just jump on everything that Hamas says. Is that what's happening?
Well, I think that's exactly that. Well, first of all, Hamas have used humanitarian aid as a way to control the civilian population in Gaza. So what was happening is that aid would go in, and I don't recall any other war where you've had to provide humanitarian aid for the entity that you're at war with. In this case, we're at war with Gaza and not the civilian population. Nevertheless, on a daily basis, aid has been going into the Gaza Strip, and Hamas was hijacking that aid and either keeping it for themselves, and we have that from former hostage testimonies, or they were reselling the aid, which should be free, to civilians in Gaza at exorbitant amounts of money, and using that money to pay their fighters. Now, Israel suspended aid in March for a couple of weeks after there were stockpiles of that aid still sitting in the Gaza Strip, still sitting in warehouses waiting for aid distribution organizations, mostly through the United Nations, to distribute that aid. Now, because the mechanism wasn't working, Israel, in tandem with the United States and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, looked at a new mechanism that manages to bypass Hamas and deliver the aid directly to the Palestinian civilians. And of course, this negates the United Nations and various aid agencies and Hamas. So what we are seeing is a concerted narrative being spun with the human rights ecosystem, sadly with Western countries and definitely the United Nations, who are saying that the situation is dangerous for Palestinians and they are getting killed when they go to receive aid. Now, the IDF released footage just 2 days ago, which shows the Palestinians running towards the aid distribution point and the command being given to soldiers, do not shoot, do not open fire, even if they get close. Now, in cases where there have been stampedes or the crowd have gotten too close, the IDF will shoot away from the civilians. Now, what we understand, and this comes from testimony from Gaza civilians, as well as the GHF and the IDF, is that Hamas create a pressurized scenario on the ground, shooting towards civilians, pushing civilians to go forward, creating a stampede kind of pressurized environment. And this is what has led to civilians being killed. And of course, we have the numbers that are up for debate. The IDF say that the numbers being put out by Hamas or the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry are very different to the numbers on the ground. But we have a situation where the media is running with the Hamas narrative instead of checking the facts on the ground and perpetuating this horrific narrative.
Journalists are really too ready to believe everything that Hamas says as the truth, especially and even though in their religion they're allowed to lie.
And they're quite blatant about it. They've been quite blatant about the fact that they are more than happy to sacrifice their civilian population. And here I would really, really encourage listeners to go onto the Henry Jackson Society website and read the forensic reports that have been done by their researchers into civilian casualty numbers and into Hamas's human shield strategy. And you can see for yourself how Hamas has devised this whole narrative, this whole human shield strategy to sacrifice their civilian population, to drive up those numbers and to paint a very, very destructive image of Israel, which the world is swallowing. I mean, it beggars belief.
Does it frustrate you when you see bad journalism?
Well, as a journalist, it frustrates me tremendously. But also as an Israeli, as a Jew, it hurts. It hurts because it's lazy journalism and it is creating a very, very dangerous environment for Jews around the world. And we've certainly seen the ramifications of this. Jews being attacked in the street. We're painted as genocidal baby killers, the abuse that we see in every conceivable area, and it is quite terrifying.
Well, many are saying that Israel is committing a genocide, yet on the border, Israel is helping Druze and Christians who are actually going through a genocide. What's been happening there?
Well, that is a very, very important point that you raise, because I must have missed the mass protests in the streets, the UN emergency sessions, the resolutions, the condemnations from global governments, the encampments on campuses around the world, the rock stars and the Hollywood glitterati using their platforms to condemn the genocide. But what we are seeing is a horrific situation developing in Syria, where religious minorities, in this case particularly Christians and Syrian Druze, are facing a genocide perpetrated by forces that are loyal to the now interim president of Syria, al-Shara. So just as the Assad regime collapsed and they committed acts of intolerable cruelty, now we are seeing this genocide that echoes what we saw on the 7th of October. The same modus operandi, the same filming and broadcasting with glee as these forces maraud through these communities, burning churches, executing members of these communities, Christian minorities, Druze minorities, raping the women, kidnapping women and children, beheading the men. And I know it is brutal to hear, but we need to bear witness because the world is silent. And Israel has vowed, we said never again. And never again doesn't mean just protecting our people. It means protecting our brothers and sisters from the Christian community and our brothers and sisters, the Druze, who we have a covenant of blood with, that we protect these communities. So Israel is striking al-Shara military assets and targets in Syria in order to defend the Druze and Christian populations while sending in humanitarian aid. And I received a statement this morning from a spokesperson on behalf of the Syrian Druze who said that amongst the medical supplies that Israel is sending in is we've had to send in morning after pills to ease the burden of the women who've been sexually violated by al-Shara's forces in Syria.
A lot of these people, they go on marches on Saturday or they make encampments at colleges. They don't really care about genocide, do they? Because they only really care about if Israel is doing something, because they would be marching today and they would be getting up and saying how Syria is committing a genocide against these people. They don't really care about genocide, do they? They just really want to attack Israel.
Well, that's exactly it, because they have been silent about what is happening in Syria, silent about another genocide that is happening, and that is the genocide of Christians in Nigeria. I think the latest number is about 60,000 Nigerian Christians have been murdered in the most brutal way by the Islamists from the Fulani terror group who maraud through these villages in Nigeria on a weekly basis and execute Christians and burn their churches down. We have another genocide in Sudan where starvation is being used as a weapon of war against the population, again committed by jihadists in that country. And nothing is said. Nothing is said. And genocide is not about numbers. War is ugly. Horrific things happen in wars. But genocide, which is a legal definition, it's very easy for people on marches and encampments and whatnot to throw out these buzzwords, but they actually have legal basis. And genocide is not about numbers. Genocide is about intent to wipe out whole population groups. And we are certainly seeing that in Syria, in Nigeria, and in the Sudan.
As a journalist, is Israel committing a genocide? They are fighting a very different war than other people have had to face. They're fighting terrorists who are hiding within the population and underground networks as well. But is Israel actually committing a genocide?
I can say quite unequivocally that Israel is not committing a genocide. Yes, horrific things happen in war, and it is abhorrent that women and children and innocents get killed. But I think if I had to blame anyone for what's happening in Gaza, I'd blame Hamas. The fact that they are proud of their ability to sacrifice their civilian population and have said again and again and again that they're quite happy to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of Gazans for their stated goal, which is the extermination of the Jewish state. Just that statement alone is a call for genocide. They said, we will commit October the 7th again and again and again and again. And that is a call for genocide. Their charter is genocidal. Now, Israel, by providing humanitarian aid, by sending in our troops to surgically extricate Hamas from the Gaza Strip, Israel that gives the early warnings to Gazans to evacuate, to seek shelter. And another thing, this war is now nearly 2 years old. If Israel was committing a genocide, wouldn't the war be over by now? And if Israel was committing a genocide, and if Hamas truly believed that, wouldn't they sit down and say, these are our terms? We've got to end the killing of our people. So I think that it's important before people throw out pejoratives or buzzwords is to really, really take an in-depth look at what is happening on the ground. But we have a situation when people say, I'm anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic. I don't hate Jews. Some of my best friends are Jewish, but I hate those Zionists and the Jewish state. Well, you know what? It's blatant anti-Semitism, and they are more than happy to pick up on any accusation in order to push that agenda.
Does it feel like the whole world is against Israel?
Sometimes it does. I mean, sometimes, Paul, when I look on my computer and I see what's happening, and I know that X is only a small percentage of the world's population, and I see our so-called allied countries taking positions that I see as anti-Israel. When you see this constant pressure, it makes me feel like there's a Nazi behind every corner. But then I read the comments on articles and YouTubes, and in my international travels, I come across people, the silent majority, who are doing the homework, who are not believing what terror organizations are saying. And I know that we are not alone. We have our incredible Christian brothers and sisters who are standing resolutely with us. And let me tell you, there are times when you literally hold us up on your shoulders. And I like to think that more people than we realize stand with us. But I see the environment in the world today. I see how aggressive the other side is. And to a point, I can understand why people want to keep their support quiet. But I ask everybody to raise their voices.
Does Lay of the Land feel like a mission to get the good truth out there?
Absolutely. Absolutely, we feel that it is our mission. We are open to opinions, but we do see, especially now, that this is our mission. Our mission is to make sure that you get the facts on the ground, not just in Israel, but also around the region. We bring you news from the Arab world that you might not see in the mainstream media either, but we bring you that. And also with the Israel brief, which is a part of it, is our effort to ensure that you get Israel's side of the story, warts and all. And sometimes I am often criticized by people who will be saying, you were critical of Netanyahu or the government. And, in Israel, it's a national sport to criticize our government, no matter who the government of the day is. That is democracy. And that's certainly not anti-Semitic. But when we see this perpetual call for Israel to cease to exist, that is blatantly anti-Semitic. And it certainly is our mission to educate as much as possible. And interestingly, we have a lot of readers in the Arab world. We receive very little anti-Semitism. So I like to think that we're doing our job.
Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Because I love my country. I love my people. I am blessed to have the ability to write and to speak, and with brave young men and women fighting for us 24/7, how dare I not bring my abilities to the fore? And also, we are proud that we give other people who want to write, and it can be on any subject. And if any of your listeners want to write to us, contribute an article, we would love to hear from you. It's also an opportunity to showcase some really, really talented writers who might not get the opportunity. And as I say, we feature a variety of topics, from various therapies to health issues, to political issues, human interest stories. You know, if it's interesting to our readers, we are certainly going to publish them.
What is your prayer, your hope for Israel at this time?
My prayer, first and foremost, is the return of the 50 hostages. I don't think as a nation we can even remotely begin to heal until all 50 are home. Hostages of multiple faiths, not all from Israel. We have 49 males, 1 female. Only 20, we believe, are still alive. We have the remains of Hadar Golden, who fell in defense of Israel on Protective Edge in 2014. His remains held for over 4,000 days. They need to be returned for a dignified burial. My prayer for Israel is peace, peace in the region, peace with our neighbors. My prayer for Israel is, may she be strong, may her people heal, may we see peace in our region, around the world. And my prayer is of gratitude for all those who are defending us night and day. My prayers for the families who are bereaved, and my prayer in gratitude for every single person who prays for the peace of Jerusalem every single day. You hold us up on your mighty shoulders.
Amen. Yeah. What is your website, Facebook page for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Okay, so you can find Lay of the Land at www.layoftheland.online, and you'll be able to see our email details there. So if you want to be in touch with us, we also put out a weekly newsletter. We are on Facebook at Lotlsite, so it's LOTLSITE. We are on YouTube at the Israel Brief, and we would love it if you could follow and hit that subscribe button, and we try and make it as interactive as we can. And we're on X at Lay of the Land 5, and God bless you for giving me the space to speak about Lay of the Land.
Rolene, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you very much, and God bless you, Paul, and all your listeners.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.